On a winter night in 410 BCE, a Babylonian scribe wrote down the birth of a child. Not the child's face, not the parents' hopes, not a prophecy about romance, work, or a hidden personality. He wrote the sky. The tablet records a date, the phase of the moon, and the changing appearances of planets. It is one of the earliest surviving documents that scholars call a Babylonian birth horoscope. That phrase sounds familiar, but nothing on this clay tablet looks like the colorful wheel on a phone app. There are no 12 houses, no rising sign, no paragraph about whether the child is secretly ambitious or emotionally guarded. So why does this small object matter? Because for centuries before it, Mesopotamian sky watchers usually read the heavens for kings, cities, crops, and wars. This tablet marks a change in question. Could a particular person's birth be placed into the same celestial record? The earliest surviving Babylonian birth records are dated to 410 BCE. One identifies the time of birth in the Babylonian calendar, during the reign of the Persian king Darius II. It does not provide a complete reading of a life. Instead, it gathers astronomical information around the birth, lunar events, planetary appearances, weather, and calendar notes. That is important. The scribe was not simply looking up at the sky at the exact minute a baby arrived. Some planets might have been below the horizon. Some data belonged to earlier or later observations. To assemble the record, an expert could draw on the kind of observational archive and calculation that Babylonian scholars had been building for generations. The tablet is therefore not proof that an ordinary family walked into an astrology shop. It is proof that highly trained scribal knowledge had begun to be applied to an individual birth. And even the word horoscope needs care. It comes from Greek, and the Babylonian documents do not yet contain every feature later readers expect from a Greek or modern natal chart. They are better understood as early personal celestial dossiers. To see the shift, start with the older question. In Mesopotamia, the sky could be treated as a field of signs. An eclipse, an unusual cloud, the first appearance of a planet, or a halo around the moon might be connected with danger, harvest, political stability, or the king's safety. The Great Omen tradition, conventionally called Enuma Anu Enlil, collected celestial signs and their possible terrestrial consequences. Its concern was often public: the realm, the ruler, an enemy, a city, or the coming season. In the Neo-Assyrian period, court scholars sent celestial reports to kings. If a sign looked dangerous, rulers could seek ritual responses intended to avert, transfer, or manage the threat. This was not astronomy in the modern scientific sense. The goal was not to test whether a physical force caused a political event. The goal was to classify a sign and find its meaningful parallel in a learned tradition. Still, it required serious technical work, long observation, careful dates, copied texts, and specialists who knew how to compare a new sky with older records. The sky was not yet a personality test. It was closer to a public warning system whose most important reader was the king. It is tempting to tell this story as if people suddenly became more individualistic and the stars followed them. The evidence points to something more practical. Babylonian scholars developed increasingly regular ways to describe where celestial bodies appeared along the path later called the zodiac. By the 5th century BCE, the ecliptic was being treated as 12 equal signs of 30 degrees each. That was a new kind of measuring grid. Earlier, a text might locate a planet near a named star or describe a visible event. A fixed zodiac made it easier to state positions in repeatable intervals. Once the sky could be measured in a shared coordinate system, a birth could be tied to it with much greater precision. The key move was not, the planets created this person. The key move was, this person entered the world under a describable sky. That sounds modest, but it made a new kind of record possible. Every birth had a date. Every date could, in principle, be connected to a structured celestial archive. A cosmic sign no longer had to appear as a dramatic surprise before anyone could write it down. The 410 BCE tablets make this distinction visible. Their language is compact. They preserve astronomical and calendar information more than a detailed forecast. They do not tell us the child's favorite color, future career, or inner wounds. Later Babylonian horoscopes often list the positions of the sun, moon, and visible planets on a birth date. Some include prognostic statements, but the surviving corpus is small and uneven. That limits what historians can say. We can say that birth was becoming a relevant moment for celestial documentation. We can say that learned astronomical practice was being directed toward an individual. We cannot turn every surviving tablet into a private diary, or assume every person in Babylon had one. The people who produced these records needed literacy, specialist training, and access to a technical tradition. The earliest users may have belonged to circles close to temples, archives, or scholarly households. Personal astrology had begun. Mass astrology had not. Now compare this object with a modern birth chart. Today, software asks for a date, time, and place. It gives a round diagram, houses, planetary aspects, and often a psychological story about identity, relationships, and self-development. The early Babylonian tablet is not that system in miniature. It uses an older scribal world, lunar visibility, planetary stations, calendar months, and observational notes. Its purpose was bound to a culture that treated celestial phenomena as meaningful signs, not as personality categories. The familiar later architecture of Western horoscopic astrology developed through contact and transformation in the Hellenistic Mediterranean world. Babylonian zodiacal methods and planetary knowledge were important ingredients, but they were combined with Greek and Egyptian techniques and new interpretive frameworks. Then the tradition continued through Greek, Roman, Arabic, Persian, and medieval European scholarship. Modern astrology added still more layers, including the language of psychology and self-help. So when an app calls you a certain kind of person because of your sun sign, it is using ancient names inside a much later machine. The deepest change was a shift of scale. Older celestial omen traditions could ask, will the king be safe? Will a city face hunger? Will an army return? A birth record asked, what was the sky like when this particular life began? That did not make the individual equal to a modern autonomous self. Ancient societies still had sharp differences of rank, access, and power, nor did it erase older public divination. Court omens continued, but it opened a path. If the heavens could contain information about a kingdom, perhaps they could also frame the beginning of one person's life. The clay tablet does not settle whether that inference was true. History cannot do that. It shows us how a technical archive, an omen tradition, and a new measuring system made the inference imaginable. This is why the earliest birth horoscopes are more interesting than a claim that Babylonians invented your star sign. They preserve a moment when a learned culture repurposed public sky knowledge for a personal event. They show a world in which observation, calculation, writing, ritual, and political anxiety were not cleanly separated into modern disciplines.